Hello and welcome to Simon Says Artwork. In this video I'm going to be working in the big blue sketchbook. Now if you've seen my videos in here before, you will know that this is a black and white sketchbook where I work from imagination. There's never any reference, and the last time I showed this drawing being made, but on this occasion I'm going to be doing something else. Now the rest of these drawings I didn't unfortunately film the process. I think I filmed part of this but not enough of it to make a video out of, so I won't bore you with that. And I will go through some of these drawings at another time, but in this video I'm going to be doing some random parts and pieces and just kind of like an explosion of different components. So okay, let's get started. This is the big blue sketchbook. I started this several years ago, and it would be something which I tried to complete each double page before moving on to the next, and that was something which I stuck to for the first, I don't know, 7 or 8 pages maybe. And it's going to be an ink first sketchbook where there's never any underdrawing. And not only that, but there's never any photo reference. And aside from that, it's going to be a sketchbook where I don't give much thought to the subject. I just go with the flow. That's one of the biggest achievement double pages, and I've got a process video for that. So now we're on to the spare parts page. And when I first started this page, I just started doing big shapes and trying to follow through with the big shapes, making it into some kind of a 3D form. And I'm not drawing anything specific. Sometimes things will resemble something, but it won't be anything specific enough where it will be, you can see there on that quick turn of the page that I had started hatching on the next page, which is a bit bad, but I think it's because I had an idea about doing a whole hatching page, and then I just abandoned this briefly, but I haven't continued with the hatching idea because I need to finish this page. Not only do I try to finish each double page before starting the next, but I use any bleed through from the previous page to initiate the first few marks of the next page. So for this double page spread, I started where there was little spots of black that had bled through from the previous double page, but that does always mean that the first marks that I make on each double page is on the left page, because that's where the bleed through occurs, as I've started from the front, and as you go through it's always the left page which has the bleed. I keep checking to make sure that this isn't bleeding through too badly, because I've never used the Pigma Micron pens in this sketchbook, or this type of sketchbook. Shapes like this I quite like drawing because it is just elongated rectangles in perspective, and then when things like this happen, this wobbly line, that I add it to a kind of a box-like shape. There's no object or design that I'm basing this off of. I'm just trying to follow through as though this is a device that exists. So if it does resemble anything, then let me know, but in this process I don't reference anything for shapes like that. And it does happen where wobbles occur, and if wobbles occur in the line, then I try to put little suggestions that that's part of a grip or some kind of change in materials. The tricky part is doing overlapping objects and not making sure that your lines don't cross over the first shape. But it's also working out what I'm trying to draw, because I'm trying to put shapes together that look like things but truly aren't things. I do a lot of bits of what could be screws or tacks or something like that, but I don't know whether that's what they look like to you, and whatever you see is just as correct as anything that I suggest they could be. because I'm truly not trying to emulate anything. Anyway, I've made that point enough times now, so I can move on to the shape design. Now, I like big curves, and as you can see here, that's what I start off a lot of these shapes with, is a big curved shape, and then trying to add smaller details out of that. Sometimes it'll go more boxy at the ends of the curves, because I think that that's what makes it look like a man-made design. Is that when you have something which curls around a corner and then has some kind of a box or a block at the end of that, it looks as though you could have bought it from, I don't know, either online or from a shop with little gadgets. A few kind of bolt-like shapes. So I try to do nuts and bolts, I suppose, or screws and washers. And it was just the idea of, if there's going to be a lot of components and it looks like an explosion, then it could be nice having little screws and things flying through the air as well. Now, I've just realised that thing at the bottom looks like it could be some kind of elongated drawing pin, but that's not what it's meant to be. It's not meant to be anything. And things which look like bands, I leave some shapes for later to try to complete. So those 3 arches that you can see on the left, which almost look like ribs, I have no idea what to do with those yet. And then at some point I make a decision about how I'd like to unify those 3 things. And it's usually that type of decision, is what can I use to thread these things together. Otherwise, a lot of my effort goes into the angles that things are flying through the air. So for this, whatever it is, I want it to be showing one edge so that it's not coming quite straight on, so that you can see a little bit of perspective, even if it is a curved design. And then I add a clip onto the end, and sadly the top of the sketchbook is out of the shot, but it's nothing especially interesting that you're missing there. It's just a kind of curved belt shape that I do. And then a lot of these slim pins or something, which I try to make sure that they're on a slightly different angle than the others. I do find a lot of pleasure out of drawing a geometric shape and then applying perspective to it when I've limited the amount of detail or fill lines on the inside. And I quite like doing things like this as well, where you've got little detail bars on the inside which suggest it's some kind of technology. But I like the things where I just do a shape that turns around a corner on a kind of squared out block. Now, this is just to try and get a long straight line going through parts of these wiry shapes, and I have no idea what it is even now, and I've only just done this drawing, what it is that I'm doing. Oh, I thought to separate the bars, that's right, and to have some kind of join in the middle. And it's just something to try and fill that space to look as though it could be functional. But yeah, in a moment I'm sure I'll be doing another one of these shapes where I start to draw a rectangle and it curves around a corner. And I really like those. I really like drawing those. I think I will return to this double page at some point, but I like how much space there is at the moment in between everything as well, because it makes everything visible as an individual object. Whereas the more that I add to it, the less that'll be the case. This is how I unify these rib shapes, is that I just put a kind of a bar or a belt going through them. And again, it doesn't have to be anything which makes sense, it's just something which to me makes that shape seem more or less organic. Now, this is one of those shapes that I was talking about, where I take a geometric shape, turn it around a corner and do very little detail inside of it. I like those types of shapes. I really like drawing them. I think it's because it looks realistic to me, and yet it's so minimal that it's literally just following the lines and the perspective that sells the concept. And then with the smaller things, I quite like adding little lines or dots or details which could suggest that it is something. And this is what I did to make that city image that you saw, that sci-fi city double page before this page. It was just trying to create a shape and then impose perspective onto that shape. And here I thought of doing several sheets of either metal or I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it could be. It's more just if things were thin sheets that were stacked together and had a shape design to them so that it wasn't just a simple rectangle. All types of different components and parts I find quite interesting designs, and sometimes I would draw things which I know that I've got from somewhere, but I'm not thinking of anything specific. For anyone who hasn't watched other videos from this channel, I have talked before about how I have aphantasia, which is something where you can't visually see anything in your imagination. So when someone says picture an apple, I always used to say, yeah, I've pictured an apple, but in truth I didn't actually see an apple in my imagination, even though I will have committed to a specific type of apple and will be describing that if I'm asked to give details. And it was only when I did a podcast episode, I think it was early this year, about aphantasia, that I really thought about what am I seeing in my imagination. And in truth, it's nothing. I don't see anything in my imagination. It's completely blank. I think that's why I struggle with directions when someone says, okay, you go up this road and then you know where such a thing is, and I'll just be thinking, no, I don't know where any of this is. I can't picture or see anything that we're talking about. And I think that's why I've always struggled with following directions without having a map or having some kind of landmark where I'll think, I know how to get to that. Now, if you just give me lefts and rights from that point, then I can do it. But otherwise, if you're giving steps of directions, I'll usually get lost. This is something which I had an idea of doing, and it didn't quite work out as I wanted it to, but it's at least a different shape than everything else, which was, I thought, if I do pins coming out of a block, that could be quite interesting. So I had to try and draw several pins, and then I drew the block underneath them. And that's the only way that I could think how to achieve that without spending too much time thinking about it. Part of the philosophy of this sketchbook is to not spend a lot of time thinking about how you're designing something. It's just to try and go for it. So each page is just based on immediate inclinations and intuitions. And I quite like that as a philosophy generally with most things in life. I've never scripted anything for any of my videos, you can probably tell. And the same for podcasts. I always just try to go with the flow. And I always find that's more natural, more honest. And I struggle less, and I think I would probably hesitate more and be a lot more nervous if I had to read something or follow any type of a specific plan. So for this type of drawing in this sketchbook, it's very much my comfort zone to base one idea off an idea that I've already just created, and just to try and continue to add to that. It's knowing when to stop and knowing whether or not you could stop at this point. And I've chosen to stop for now and share this video just because it's starting to fill up a bit, and I think it's already an interesting double page when you flick through the book. I think it will be something which will add interest to the experience of flicking through and looking at the drawings. I can't wait for this book to be finished, not because I don't like it, but because I'd like the idea of looking through all of these different ideas one after the other. As you can see, a lot of these curves are a similar starting place for where I will create this design, but then I will try to vary up how I finish off the idea. I don't like the thought that two things will look too similar next to each other. Possibly that could have been a good thing to do a few similar things in different perspectives, falling at different angles and a different rate, but the way that I drew this was to try and change every object so that it had a different design and different shape to it, that it would take up the space differently on the page, so that it would be more based on the interaction or the relation between each object to each other than it would be anything to do with a series of objects as though they were literally part of a set. I think it is looking like an explosion. I think it helps with all of these kind of rope-like or string-like shapes that are flopping around in the center. I think that really helps the idea of motion, but at the same time I do try to consider the perspective being something which shows projectiles and try to enforce motion. This is another one of those shapes that I like drawing, where it's bars and blocks in almost a bridge-like shape that I create, a bracket or something, and I do quite like those. And now it's just a case of continuing, and I quite like shapes like this as well. It's a strange little curved shape, and it's just interesting. I think each one is quite curious as what it could be. If you put all of these together, what do you think it would make if it were one object? Maybe it'd be some kind of a sports-based contraption, or it could be something scientific. Now this here almost looks like it's a stand or a set of steps or something, but I wasn't thinking about steps or platforms when I was doing it. I was more thinking about blocks and how they can connect, and how if you were to open up an engine of something, it would probably have some kind of design similar to this, and it wouldn't mean that it was steps. It would mean that it's functional in some other way that we don't know about, because unless you know how an engine works and all of the components, it's just a curiosity. But that's where I've got up to for the time being. Okay, so that's the drawing done. Now I might continue with it, but for now I think that it's quite an interesting drawing. It's got strange composition, but it has kind of got a lot of different moving parts and angles, which I think show a lot of movement and, you know, kind of projection to it. So I quite like the fact that you've got things exploding in perspective and just becoming kind of, you know, quite animated, even though it's a still image. I quite like that, and I want the different angles crisscrossing all over the place. So I might continue with it, but for now I think I'm going to leave it there and move on to the next double page. So that is where that is going to stay for the time being, for this foreseeable future I should say. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please leave a like, comment down below, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. Share my channel with your friends and family if they like art videos, because I am trying to grow this channel and I'm relying on you to help me do that, please. And after doing all that, then I will see you in the next video.